I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I'm not exactly sure how to start this. I suppose I should start by telling you something about the brewery. It's old, of course, very old, and it was founded in 1778. Yes, I think that's right. So, it's a very old brewery, and we use traditional production methods, and the products themselves are very, very old. As you can see, and we have an imperial stout, which is very, again, very traditional, and it's described as dark, immense, rich, with a depth of burnt fruitiness. This beer is an ideal nightcap. Imperial Stout is 50% stronger than any of the other beers in the export premium range. There. We also do a lager. We also make a lager, which is European, a European type beer, and well, sales have increased a lot over the last year. Of course, we were a family firm. Well, in fact, we still are a family firm. As you know, the the present owner is Ben Westwood. There was a takeover bid. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was resisted, and we continue to run as a family firm. And this is important for the corporate image. Well, in fact, this is why we're here today, to discuss the corporate image and decide if it needs to change. We also have horses. You may have seen them delivering beer to the local pubs. Yes? Yes. Production has actually dropped a little over the last few years, although profits have actually held up. And that's something we need to discuss. I mean, can we actually continue as a small independent brewery? Anyway, that's about it. So that is the main question today. So I don't know whether that helps at all, but it's all I can think of really. So I'll leave. I think that's that. So I'll leave it there. Okay.
Right, the tour. I've got some overheads here to give you a picture of... oh, well, never mind. We'll manage without. Anyway, I'll tell you something about the plant. We'll be having a look around. I don't know how much you know about us. Perhaps some of you have been here before. Anyway, I'll start by telling you a bit about the plant, so that later you can ask questions, and it should help to understand the process. So, here we are in the main building. Hello, and welcome to Standard Electronics. I'm Jeff Maxwell, the factory manager in charge of the plant you'll be seeing today. I know some of you have come a long way today, so we aim to make your tour both interesting and worthwhile. Before we start the tour, I'd like to give you a brief presentation about the company. This will help to put the production side of the business into context. My talk will last about 15 minutes, and I'll be using the flip chart. Now, there's quite a lot to cover, so I'd be grateful if you'd hold any questions until the end of my talk. As you can see, I've divided up my presentation into three main parts. Firstly, we'll run briefly through the history of the company. Secondly, I'll tell you something about our main markets. This is important in understanding the production process. And finally, I'll come to the people, our most important asset. Okay? Let's start with the history. Standard started out as a private limited company when it was first established in 1935. In any case, I'll tell you something about the plant so that later you can ask questions. And it should help to understand the process. So, here we are in the main building. Not much of a building. Anyway, we've been based here for more than 50 years. One of the country's best-loved engineering firms. Anyway, it started back in 1943 when there was a need for high-quality connections. You know, the sort Britain's famous for. What we use is a process called pre-priodine electrostatic coating. In this process, we apply important in understanding the production process. And finally, I'll come to the people, our most important asset. Okay, let's start with the history. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to give you a history lesson, just a few key dates. Standard started out as a private limited, went public. So we've had a pretty eventful 60 years or so. Anyway, I'll leave the history there. If you're interested, you'll find more about Standard in this pretty brochure. You should find one of them amongst all the other bits of paper our PR people love to give out. So let's turn now to a brief overview of our main markets. If you look at this chart, you'll see our slice of the pie, which in the European region, respectively. By the way, you may have seen the story in the news today about our main competitor, Manton. It seems they're going to bring out a new product which could seriously infringe the copyright lawsuit. So we'll have to wait and see how the market reacts. Anyway, let me get back to what I was saying about new markets for Standard. I think we have to say that nobody really knows what the next century will bring. What's for sure is you need people who can adapt quickly. And that brings me to the final part of this short introduction to Standard, and that is to talk about our people. As I said, they are our most important asset. Our total worldwide headcount, developed staff. We've even sponsored a group to sail around Britain. So, before I go on, are there any questions about our personnel policy?
The significance of these figures incorporating data from multi-center studies cannot be underestimated. Next slide. In the American part of the survey, it was found that success in business can be correlated directly with leadership styles. An individualistic style appears to be closely associated with rapid career path progression, whereas a group or participative style, despite its evident attractiveness to all members of staff, is correlated with a relatively slow career progression. Next slide. This is further illustrated in my next slide, which shows the results of another survey into senior management attitudes. Although lip service is paid to the concept of participative management, the real perceptions of leadership qualities completely contradict this view. It can be further seen that such surveys
we can't really afford to ignore these results. The survey was one of the most extensive of its kind and covers a wide range of corporations. Thank you. We can see in this next slide the results from the American part of the survey. This survey was based on interviews carried out with senior managers in 200 corporations. You can see here 35% of the group of managers classified as participative reached senior management positions. On the other hand, 74% of the more individualistic managers achieved senior management status. So, I think the conclusion is self-evident. If you want to reach the top of American companies, you have a much better chance if you adopt a fairly autocratic, top-down approach. What is important here is not to dismiss the last 10 years. 10 years in which the value of participative management has been preached. No. What we must do is to better understand the motivation of senior management. Thank you. If we look at this next slide, we can see the results from another survey into senior management attitudes. This shows how managers, firstly, evaluate the qualities of a good manager, and secondly, how they evaluate the qualities of a good leader. What is quite clear is that managers are supposed to be sensitive, adaptable, and cooperative, while leaders need to be decisive, dynamic, and single-minded. So, we find there is a massive contradiction. Good managers are supposed to be participative, to make sure they consult and discuss. Good leaders are supposed to be strong individuals able to make decisions on their own.
So, we need to think about the products. Our premium export lager is described as a German-branded Pilsner with an above-average alcohol content. It's positioned at the top end of the market and is only available through selected merchants and retailers. Anyway, I'm sure you're all familiar with that product. Our high malt bottled bitter Rutters is described as a traditional West Country bitter with a very dark colour and thick consistency. It has a high price for a bottled bitter and is available through all major supermarket chains and off licences. As you can see, production in 1984 was around the 245,000 bottles, and then during the next 5 years increased steadily. 5 years ago, the annual output reached 480,000 bottles there, as you can see. And as you can see, the figures stayed at that sort of figure until last year, when they dipped to 460,000 there, as you can see.